Of all the rocks upon which we build our lives, we are most dependent on the family. The family is that most important foundation. And we are called to recognize and honor how critical every father is to that foundation. They are teachers and coaches, they're mentors, and they're role models. They are examples of success and the men who constantly push us towards success. But if we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit that too many fathers are also missing. Too many fathers are MIA. Too many fathers are AWOL. Missing from too many lives and too many homes. They've abandoned their responsibilities. They're acting like boys instead of men. And the foundations of our family have suffered because of it. You and I know this is true everywhere, but nowhere is it more true than in the African American community. We know that more than half of all black children live in single-parent households. Half. A number that's doubled since we were children. We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They're more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teen parents because the father wasn't in the home. The foundations of our community and our country are weaker because of this. Some of it has to do with the failures of our government, and those failures are real. But the change we need is not just going to come from government. It's not just going to come from a president. It's going to come from us. It's going to come from each and every one of us. We need families to raise our children. We need fathers to recognize that responsibility doesn't just end at conception. That doesn't just make you a father. What makes you a man is not the ability to have a child. Any fool can have a child. That doesn't make you a father. It's the courage to raise a child that makes you a father. And I know what it means to have an absent parent. My father wasn't in the house when I was growing up. I have to say my circumstances weren't as tough as they are for many young people today. Because even though my father left us when I was 2 years old, and I only knew him by the letters he wrote and the stories my family told, I was growing up in Hawaii. Hawaii is not quite as tough as the South Side. See, a lot of children don't get those chances. There's no margin for error in the lives of so many of our children. They've got to have everything going for them. They've got to have mama rooting for them, but they've got to have daddy rooting for them too. I understand my story is different, but I know. And I know the toll it took on me not having a father in the house. The hole in your heart when you don't have a male figure in the home that can guide you and lead you and set a good example for you. So I resolved many years ago that it was my obligation to break the cycle. That if I could do anything in life, I would be a good father to my children. That if I could do anything, I would give them that rock, that foundation on which to build their lives. That would be the greatest gift I could offer them. And I say this knowing that I've been an imperfect father, knowing that I've made mistakes. I'll continue to make more, wishing that I could be home more for my girls and my wife than I am right now. I say this knowing all of these things because even though we're all going to be imperfect parents, imperfect fathers, even as we all face difficult circumstances at times in our lives, there's still certain lessons we have to strive to live as fathers. Whether we're black or white, whether we're rich or poor, whether we're from the South Side or the wealthiest suburbs. The first lesson, I think, that all of us has to embrace is the idea of responsibility. Because if we want to set high expectations for them, we've also got to set some high expectation for ourselves. You know, sometimes, you know, it's interesting during this process of running for president. You remember at the beginning, people were wondering how come he doesn't have all the support in the African American community. You remember that? That was when I wasn't black enough. Now I'm too black. But you remember that? You remember that, Vic? Y'all remember. And what was interesting was how many people would come up to me and say, oh Barack, we love you, man. We're rooting for you, but we just don't think that a black man can be elected president. I mean, we had already defeated ourselves before we even started. We didn't set high enough expectations for ourselves. We believe that somebody else can do it, but we can't do it. And that filters down to our children. That filters down to our children. When we set low expectations for ourselves, we set them low for our children. You know, I don't. Too many parents come and they say, "Oh, this child's got a great report card. They got a B, all B's." I say, "All B's? Is that the highest grade? Is that the best you can do? I thought there was this other grade, an A. It's nice you got a B, but you can get an A. It's great. It's great if you have a job, but you know, you can get a better job. It's a wonderful thing if you got a better job, but maybe you can own a business and create jobs. It's a wonderful thing if you're married and living in a home with your children, but don't just sit in the house and watching SportsCenter all day. You know, I don't know if you guys remember, Chris Rock had a routine. He said, too many of our men, they're proud, they brag about doing the things they're supposed to do. They say, well, I'm not in jail. Well, you're not supposed to be in jail. Don't brag about that. You know, well, so we're glad that you're in the home, but engage your child. So many of our children are growing up in front of the television set, in front of the video games. As fathers and as parents, we've got to spend more time with them and help them with their homework and turn off the TV set once in a while, turn off the video game and the remote control and read a book to your child. That's how we build that foundation. We know that education is everything to our children's future. We know that they will no longer be competing for jobs against people in Indiana or California. They're going to be competing against young people in China and in India, all over the world. And we know that the work and the studying and the levels of education that's going to require. You know, just this past week I stopped by an 8th grade graduation for a young woman's charter school, wonderful school. And there was all the pomp and all the circumstance, and parents were all bringing flowers. And I thought to myself, well, this is nice that we're celebrating, but you know what? This is just the 8th grade. You know, when I see sometimes these 8th grade graduations, I want to remind people, now hold on a second. Hey, this is just 8th grade. So let's not go over the top.